I was situated concealed by a supporting pillar during my sister's wedding event. No one recognized my relationship to the family. Subsequently, a stranger sat beside me and instructed, "Just follow my lead and pretend you are with me." When he stood up to speak to the attendees, everyone turned, and my sister's face altered. Nonetheless, I am moving too fast through the story. Let me start from the beginning. From the moment I received that off-white invitation via mail 3 months earlier, the letter arrived for me on a Tuesday morning in April. I lived in Denver then, working as a pastry chef at a specialty bakery downtown. My apartment was small but cozy, filled with the scent of cinnamon and vanilla essence from my baking tests. I had been up since for that morning, perfecting a new recipe for honey lavender. Consequently, when I got back home close to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I nearly missed the elegant mail tucked between bills and grocery flyers. Victoria was getting married, my older sister, the preferred child, the daughter who could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. The invitation was formal and predictable, exactly what I expected from her. Embellished ivory script announced her marriage to a man named Gregory, a name she had never brought up during our increasingly rare phone calls. I should have felt happy for her. Sisters are supposed to share happiness during important life events. Yet, as I held the invitation, all I could focus on was the last family gathering we shared 6 months earlier. Our mother hosted the Thanksgiving celebration at her suburban house. I had brought a pumpkin dessert. I spent 2 days perfecting layers of spiced cream cheese and a ginger cookie crust that turned out wonderfully. Victoria supplied a store-bought baked good. "Elizabeth, you really shouldn't have bothered," my mother commented, barely glancing at my dessert before placing it far away on the serving table. Victoria's item looked lovely, so regular and classic. That was the standard scenario. Victoria could show up empty-handed and receive praise simply for being there. I could bring the moon on a silver tray, and it would still be somehow too much, too flashy, trying too hard. The wedding invitation included a small note card penned in Victoria's perfect handwriting. "Elizabeth, I know we haven't been close lately, but it would mean the world to have you attend. You are my only sister." I called her later that evening. She answered after the 4th ring, sounding busy. "Victoria, I got your invite. Congratulations. I worried it might get lost in the post. Will you be there?" "Of course. I wouldn't miss it. Tell me about Gregory. How did you meet?" There was a hesitation just long enough to cause me to wonder. At a medical convention, he holds a regional director role at Bennett Health Solutions. Very successful, very secure. Mom adores him, naturally. Of course, she did. I wondered if Victoria loved the man, or if she loved his resume. "I am truly happy for you," I said, trying to mean it. "Thanks. Listen, I need to go. We're meeting the wedding planner in 20 minutes. I will send you more details later." She hung up before I could say goodbye. I looked at my phone following the abrupt end to our discussion and felt a familiar feeling settle in my chest. It wasn't exactly sadness. It wasn't exactly rage. It was the dull ache of always coming second. The time leading up to the wedding quickly passed in a blur of work and planning. I bought a new dress, a light blue shade that flattered me without drawing too much attention. I took time off work from the bakery, which severely disappointed my boss since June was our busiest period. I should have noticed something was wrong when Victoria failed to ask me to be a bridesmaid. She had 5 attendants, which I learned from her social media updates. College friends, work colleagues, even our cousin Jessica, whom she hadn't barely spoken to in years. But not me. "The wedding entourage is already decided," she explained when I finally gathered the nerve to ask. "You understand, right? These are the people I interact with often." I understood completely. I understood that I would never belong to her close group, that our shared history meant zero compared to her present social standing. The wedding was planned for a Saturday in late June at an opulent venue outside Denver. I drove there by myself, my attire carefully positioned in the back, a small present wrapped in shiny paper resting on the front passenger seat. I had spent weeks deciding on a gift, eventually selecting a set of handmade ceramic containers from a nearby artisan, something meaningful, something that proved my affection. The resort was stunning. Manicured grounds stretched towards views of the mountains, and the site for the service overlooked a crystal-clear lake. Cream-colored seating was arranged in perfect lines, and flowers appeared to sprout from every surface available. Victoria spared no expense, which implied her mother spared no expense. This was the wedding she had always wanted, the perfect conclusion to her perfect daughter's perfect life. I arrived 2 hours early, hoping to find Victoria and offer help, or at least my presence. Instead, I found chaos. The bridal room was full of women in matching gowns, laughing, champagne glasses in hand. As a photographer documented the preparations, I tapped softly on the open doorway. Victoria looked up from her makeup chair, her gaze meeting mine briefly before looking away. "Elizabeth, you're here too soon. I thought maybe I could help with something. Everything is handled. The planner has organized everything. Why don't you go find your seating? The service will begin soon." One of the bridesmaids, a fair-haired woman I didn't recognize, snickered and muttered something to the person beside her. They both looked at me and gave that polite smile people use when they want you to leave. I withdrew from the space. My face flushed. I shouldn't have shown up early. I shouldn't have assumed I'd be accepted into that private space of wedding preparations. The ceremony area was still being finalized as I stepped outside. Staff members hurried, making final adjustments, refining what was already impeccable. I moved toward the designated guest seating, looking for my name card. Lines of chairs stretched ahead of me, each marked with small numbered tags. The seats near the front were obviously set aside for close relatives and prominent attendees. I expected to find my seating card around the second or third row, close enough to indicate significance, far enough to accept I wasn't part of Victoria's regular life. I found my name card in the rearmost row, the final one, half hidden behind an ornate column supporting the structure. From this vantage point, my view of the service would be blocked, making it impossible to see my sister's expression as she exchanged her promises. I stood holding the small card with my name printed elegantly, and something inside me broke. This was no error. This was intentional. This was Victoria ensuring I was exactly where she believed I should be. Forgotten? Unseen? Barely recognized? I might have left then. I could have driven back home to Denver, called in sick, and spent the day treating my bruised ego with ice cream and bad TV. But defiance made me stay put. I was her sister, I received an invitation, and I refused to give her the satisfaction of my departure. Attendees started showing up around 4 p.m. From my spot behind the pillar, I watched people find their spots, greet each other kindly, and pose for photos against the lovely setting. I recognized certain relatives from gatherings, cousins, aunts, and uncles I hadn't encountered in years. Not a single person noticed me hidden in the back. Our mother arrived 20 minutes before the start, dazzling in a dress the color of champagne that likely cost more than my rent. A staff member escorted her to the front row, glowing and receiving well wishes from everyone she encountered. She didn't look back. She didn't search the crowd for her younger daughter. Why would she? I was exactly where I should be, and the service began exactly at 5 o'clock. Music swelled from speakers that were hidden, and the wedding party walked down the center aisle. The bridesmaids looked lovely in coordinating sage green dresses, carrying bunches of eucalyptus and white roses. The groomsmen followed in crisp navy suits. Next came the flower girl and ring bearer. Children, I didn't know, likely Gregory's relatives. Finally, Victoria appeared escorted by our father. Even with my limited view, I could tell she was spectacular. Her dress was a stunning creation of silk and lace. Her veil floated behind her like mist. Our father, whom I had barely spoken to since my parents' divorce 5 years ago, looked dignified and proud in his formal clothes. I strained my neck past the column, trying to get a better vantage point. The view was awful. I managed to see maybe 40% of the event, mainly just the rear of people's heads and intermittent sightings of the official. That's when I realized I wasn't the only one in the last row. A man was seated 2 seats over, also partly obscured by the pillar. He was younger than many guests, perhaps early 30s, dressed in an impeccably fitted charcoal suit. His black hair was arranged informally, and he possessed a striking look suitable for a commercial. But what impressed me most was his facial expression. He seemed just as awkward and misplaced as I felt. He noticed me looking and offered a small, knowing smile. I gave a faint smile in return before refocusing on the service, or the part one could observe. The speaker talked about teamwork, devotion, and love. Victoria and Gregory recited promises that I couldn't clearly make out from where I was. They exchanged bands, shared a kiss to loud cheering, and just like that, my sister was wed. The service finished in about 25 minutes, although it felt simultaneously brief and extended. As people started getting up and heading towards the reception area, the stranger from my seating row came closer. Up close, he was even handsomer, with smart gray eyes that seemed highly perceptive. That was quite a vantage point, wasn't it? His tone held a touch of humor. Amazing, I answered sarcastically. I particularly liked seeing the back of that man's head in row 8. Very picturesque. He chuckled, a sincere noise that eased some tension in my chest. I'm Julian, and judging by your excellent seat location, you either offended the wedding planner or you're someone's least favored family member. Elizabeth? And I'm the bride's sister? Actually? His eyebrows went up, shock visible on his face. Her sister, and they placed you way back here. Evidently, I don't fit the wedding's image. Julian observed me briefly, and I sensed he was noticing more than just my sarcastic remark. Well, that's their mistake. The cocktail reception is starting, and I suspect it will be equally uncomfortable as the service. How about we handle it together? You don't need to feel sorry for me. I'm fine. It's not pity. It's a pragmatic partnership. I'm here accompanying a work contact who couldn't make it, meaning I only know exactly 3 people at this entire wedding, and 2 are the newlyweds who won't recall meeting me. So truly, you would be assisting me. There was sincerity in his proposal, compelling me to accept despite my injured dignity. Before I could answer, he offered his arm in a traditional manner. Shall we proceed? I paused for only a second before taking his arm. We headed towards the Predner drinks reception, and since arriving at this wedding for the first time, I felt less isolated. The gathering took place in a large covered area overlooking the lake. Round tables were arranged everywhere, decorated with more candles and floral arrangements. A bar took up one entire side, and staff moved around with plates of appetizers that looked nearly too appealing to eat. Nearly. As a pastry chef, I held firm views on food presentation, and the caterers clearly demonstrated expertise. Julian remained close as we moved through the attendees. Guests formed small clusters, conversations lively with the nice feeling generated by freely available sparkling wine and wedding excitement. Several attendees watched us with interest, likely wondering about the attractive new person and why he was paired with the sister no one noticed. We found an unoccupied table near the pavilion's perimeter. Julian returned from the beverage area with 2 glasses of wine and some snacks. He managed to persuade a waiter to gather for us. So he began, sitting opposite me. Tell me about your sister. What is she like outside of being the focus of this grand wedding celebration? I drank some wine, thinking over my reply. The reality seemed too sensitive to exposing, yet Julian's consistent eye contact encouraged sincerity. Victoria is perfect, or at least she consistently tried extremely hard to seem perfect. Successful career, great marks, stable partnerships. She is the type of daughter all parents wish for. And you are her opposite. I am the daughter who became a specialized baker instead of a lawyer or a doctor, who lives in a compact apartment rather than a house she owns, who has casual dates instead of securing a successful pharmaceutical executive. I am the failure, the one who deviated from expectations. Julian picked up a crab cake and reflected on my statement. Being a baker sounds both rewarding and difficult. Not everyone possesses that expertise. Go ahead and try telling my mother that. She still presents me as Elizabeth, who works with edibles, as if I prepare fast food items. Relational structures within families are complex. That's a polite way of saying my family environment is unstable. I took a filled mushroom, suddenly famished. I felt too anxious to eat previously. What about you? What is your occupation that earned you a spot here? I am employed in sustainable power advisory. My firm helps corporate clients shift toward eco-friendly methods. Dry, technical subjects that make guests lose interest at social events. That doesn't sound tedious whatsoever. It seems crucial. Thank you. Most folks only inquire if I can arrange a discount for them on photovoltaic panels. He grinned, yet his expression held some reservation. I was supposed to attend with my coworker Dominic. Dominic is acquainted with the groom via a professional relationship, but he contracted an illness last week, and I was nominated to take his place. Therefore, we are both unexpected wedding attendees in our unique way, or at least survivors of poor seating choices. We talked throughout the drinks reception, and I started to calm down. Regardless of the situation, Julian was engaging, posing queries that showed true curiosity rather than obligatory pleasantries. He asked about my preferred desserts to bake, the difficulties of working in a commercial kitchen, and the reasoning for choosing pastry over other cooking fields. I questioned him concerning his career, the reward of helping businesses decrease pollution, and the annoyance of managing customers who desired transformation but were unwilling to exert the necessary effort. He discussed sustainable energy with intensity, focusing on developing mechanisms to support upcoming generations, and his excitement completely engrossed me. You really have faith in your work? I noted. Is that so remarkable? Most people attending my sister's wedding appear more focused on seeming successful than truly caring about anything. Julian's demeanor changed, a thoughtful look appearing in his eyes. You observe a great deal for someone positioned behind a pillar. When you are overlooked, you become skilled at observing people. It is astonishing the things you notice when people are unaware they are being watched. A waiter announced that the meal service was starting in the main event room. Guests began moving towards the entryway, and Julian rose, extending his palm, ready to check if your dinner placement is any improvement. It was not better. The banquet room was lavish, adorned with lighting and floral displays, surely costing thousands of dollars. Long tables were set in a U formation, with the bridal party's table slightly raised where Gregory and Victoria would be seated. Name tags showed people their allocated spots. I found my card at a table in the furthest area, situated so I would have to strain my neck uncomfortably to view the main table. The surrounding seats were unoccupied, implying I was placed with the excess invitizos who were obligated to be included but didn't belong anywhere specific. Julian arrived beside me, holding his own seating card. Fascinating. I am on the opposite side of the hall, suggesting someone wanted the less important attendees separated to prevent them from gathering and disrupting the symmetry of the layout. This is absurd. My voice was harsher than intended, annoyance finally overriding my controlled demeanor. I am her sister, her soul sister, and she's treating me like an old acquaintance. She felt duty-bound to invite you-know-what. Ignore the seating plan. Julian took my name card from the table and put it in his pocket along with his Let's go. What are you planning? Adapting. Simply follow my instruction and act as if you're with me. Before I could object, he led me towards a table much nearer the front, clearly reserved for important attendees. He held me into a chair, his palm warm against my back as I sat, then settled next to me with the assurance of someone perfectly suited to the spot. Julian, we can't just do that. We already have. If anyone asks, there was an error in the assignments, and we are correcting it personally. Believe me. The table rapidly filled with guests who appeared mutually acquainted. I deduced from their chat that they were Gregory's work contacts, professionals from the drug sector who used industry terms and abbreviations unfamiliar to me. They welcomed Julian openly, addressing him by name, and he replied with a smooth certainty that indicated mutual understanding. A woman named Patricia, who introduced herself as the operations vice president at Bennett Health Solutions, smiled kindly at me. And you must be Julian's partner. He hasn't told anyone about you. I began to speak to clarify, but Julian smoothly interrupted. Elizabeth typically avoids public attention. She doesn't usually attend business gatherings, but she made an allowance for this wedding. How lovely. And how do you know the couple? Elizabeth is Victoria's sister. Actually, Patricia raised her eyebrows, showing shock. Oh, I wasn't aware Victoria had a sister. She never brought it up during our meetings concerning the wedding details. Her smile faded slightly, as if realizing the implication. I'm sure it simply didn't arise in conversation. I'm sure, I responded, maintaining an unemotional voice, even though the remark hurt. My sister had worked closely with Gregory's associates to organize parts of the wedding, yet she never once mentioned my existence. The meal was served in multiple stages, each dish grander than the last. Cooked scallops preceded a light salad, followed by a choice of fish or beef. The cuisine was outstanding, but I barely registered the flavor. I was overly conscious of Julian next to me, and how icily he maintained the facade of being my date. His hand rested briefly on my back or shoulder in slight motions that seemed incidental but felt deliberate. He included me in discussions, respected my views, and made me feel noticeable in a way I hadn't since arriving. Between servings, Gregory's father rose to give an address. He discussed his son's achievements, expressing pride in welcoming Victoria to the family and anticipating a promising future for the pair. He noted that Victoria introduced elegance and happiness into Gregory's life, and was exactly the woman he always hoped his son would wed. My mother followed. Her talk was briefer, but equally enthusiastic. She recalled Victoria's early years, her daughter's composure and persistence, how she had always known Victoria was destined for success. She talked about the wedding organization, shared memories of gown fittings, cake sampling, and cherished times they spent together. She failed to mention me even once, not accidentally, not even recognizing Victoria had a sister. It felt as though I had been completely removed from the family narrative. I felt Julian's hand grasp mine beneath the surface of the table, his fingers offering reassurance. I held his hand tightly, thankful for the grounding. Then the best man spoke, sharing funny stories about Gregory's single life and sincere feelings about finding genuine romance. The maid of honor followed with stories about Victoria's perfectionism and her romantic nature, about how she had always dreamed of a fairy tale nuptial ceremony. I waited for someone to mention me, to acknowledge my existence in even the most minimal method. But every single speech concluded without any mention of me. I was the forgotten guest, there yet unnoticed. Dessert arrived, a multi-layered raspberry and chocolate spectacle that looked amazing but lacked adequate taste complexity. The frosting was too sugary, the layers of cake too arid. As a skilled artisan, I couldn't help analyzing it, and Julian observed my reaction. Not exactly what you'd make. It looks great, but presentation isn't everything. The quality is poor. The chocolate flavor overwhelms the raspberry instead of balancing it, and the consistency is too heavy. Could you make something superior, Isley? The words came out more confident than I experienced. However, they were true. I might be the family disappointment in every other area. However, in the kitchen, I knew my worth. I trust you, Julian responded plainly. Following the dessert course, the evening shifted to dancing. Victoria and Gregory shared their first dance, revolving beneath ideal illumination as a band played a love song. They looked picture perfect. The ideal pair, enjoying their ideal moment. My father joined in for the father-daughter dance, and watching them, I recalled him twirling me around our living room when I was little, before the divorce, before things disintegrated. Did Victoria recall those moments? Did she ever think about how our family once was? Julian stood and held out his hand, dancing with me. You don't have to maintain the facade of the devoted date. I'm okay. I realize I don't have to. I want to. Plus, I dance poorly and require someone whose feet I can tread on without getting sued. I allowed him to escort me onto the dance floor. He wasn't bad at all. In fact, he was quite skilled, leading confidently while maintaining appropriate space. We moved to the beat, and I began to ease into the present moment. Thank you, I whispered, for this evening, for joining me, for the entire fake date plan. You weren't obliged to do any of this. Maybe I desired to... You are compelling, Elizabeth, more compelling than anyone else here. You barely know who I am. I know sufficient. I know you are skilled and deserving of more recognition. I know you see past the shallow vanity that most people accept readily. I know you're hurting, yet you are trying to hide it, and that requires courage. His statements resonated deep within me, touching a vulnerable spot I had guarded all evening. My vision blurred with restrained tears, and I rapidly blinked, determined not to weep at my sister's wedding. The tune finished, and a faster song started. More pairs moved onto the dance floor, and Julian led us to the perimeter, away from others. I need fresh air, I confessed. Let's step outside. We moved from the main room onto a balcony overlooking the grounds. The evening breeze was cool and pleasant after the heat of the packed reception. String lights shimmered in the surrounding foliage, creating a charming scene that conflicted with my internal distress. I shouldn't have attended, I declared, resting against the edge of the terrace. I knew this outcome was probable, but a part of me hoped for a different result. That maybe Victoria would recall our sisterhood. That maybe she genuinely wanted me present, not just fulfilling a requirement. Julian stood near, his shoulder gently touching mine. Familial relationships can be the most intricate connections. We are connected by lineage, yet that doesn't assure fundamental kindness, respect, or love. It sounds like you speak from your own history. My father and I haven't exchanged words in 3 years. He had rigid expectations for my future, and when I chose an alternative career, he made it clear I wasn't the daughter he desired. So, indeed, I understand the feeling of being the letdown. I turned to look at him, noticing a deeper layer in his appearance. I regret that must have been difficult. It was, and it remains so. But I gained a crucial realization. The people who are meant to love us without reservation are still human, complete with their own shortcomings, biases, and mistakes. Sometimes the people we select as family are more important than those we are related to. Is that the nature of this evening? You selecting to be generous to a stranger. Maybe it started that way, but you aren't a stranger now, Elizabeth, and this extends beyond simple benevolence. His tone held an intensity that accelerated my heartbeat. Before I could answer, the balcony doors opened, and a crowd of guests emerged, talking and laughing. The connection was interrupted, and Julian moved back slightly. We should probably head back indoors. I think they are preparing to slice the cake. The cake ritual unfolded exactly as expected. More pictures, more remarks, more perfectly staged instances for optimal effect. Victoria offered Gregory a tiny portion with extreme neatness, and he reciprocated with the same caution. New cake fights, nothing messy, perfect composure. As usual, while staff handed out pieces of the wedding cake, I saw my mother making her way through the attendees, stopping to talk to several people. She clearly enjoyed the moment, delighting in the success of her daughter's wedding. When her gaze finally landed on me, her expression showed fleeting shock, rapidly followed by displeasure. She approached our spot with deliberate steps, her mouth tightening as she neared. "Elizabeth, I wasn't expecting you to be seated here." This seating was allocated for Gregory's professional contacts. "There was an error with the seating plan," Julian explained easily before I could speak. "I am Julian, a sustainability advisor to Gregory. Elizabeth and I are attending together." My mother's eyes surveyed Julian, noting his costly attire and assured manner. I could see her quickly recalculating, evaluating my acceptability based on my date standing. "I see, it's a pleasure to meet you. Julian, I am Eleanor, Victoria's mother." She stressed the words, seemingly to indicate my position in the family ranking. "I didn't know Elizabeth was dating." "We've been maintaining a low profile," Julian replied, his hand finding mine on the table. "Elizabeth is quite cautious about sharing her private life." "Yes, she is." Eleanor's grin didn't seem genuine. "Elizabeth, darling, I trust you are enjoying the celebration." Victoria worked tirelessly to ensure perfection. "It is lovely," I managed to say. "She must be thrilled." "She is." "Gregory is precisely the man I always hoped she would marry. Successful, well-off, from a reputable background. It represents everything a mother wishes for her child." The implicit contrast lingered between us. "Unlike you, who works in a pastry shop, lives alone, and has nothing significant to show for your life." Julian squeezed my hand slightly, a quiet sign of encouragement. "Elizabeth was just explaining her work as a pastry chef. It sounds extraordinarily demanding. Not everyone possesses the dedication or skill required for that profession." Eleanor's face showed brief irritation at having her subtle insult sidestepped. "Yes, well, everyone chooses different vocations." I must rejoin the other attendees. "Do try to enjoy yourself, Elizabeth." She left abruptly, leaving behind the scent of costly fragrance and a cloud of motherly disapproval. "That was uncomfortable," Julian noted after she was gone. "That was my mother when she was feeling generous. You should see her when she really wants to criticize. I'm starting to understand why you were seated behind that pillar." The evening progressed. The music played. Peoply danced. Alcohol was plentiful. Victoria and Gregory made their rounds, receiving compliments and thanking attendees. I watched them manage the crowd efficiently, observing how they prioritized certain guests and strictly adhered to social status. They eventually arrived at our seating area, Gregory smiling broadly like a public figure. Close up, he was conventionally good-looking, possessing features that looked good on camera but lacked distinctiveness. His greeting to Julian was a quick, strong, but detached handshake. Then Victoria saw me, and a complicated mix of emotions crossed her face. Certainly, surprise. Possibly awkwardness. She likely forgot I was attending, hidden in the spot where I couldn't disrupt her perfect occasion. "Elizabeth, you look lovely," she commented, speaking with the measured courtesy reserved for vague acquaintances. "Thank you." "The wedding is beautiful, Victoria. Congratulations. I'm so glad you made it. And I see you've met some of Gregory's co-workers." She looked at Julian inquisitively. "I don't think we've met." "Julian, I collaborate with Gregory on eco-friendly projects for Bennett Health Solutions, and tonight I am Elizabeth's escort." Victoria's eyes widened a bit. This information was clearly new to her. "Oh, I wasn't aware you were seeing someone." "Elizabeth, that's fantastic." The way she spoke, stressing the word fantastic, suggested she was more astonished than delighted, as if she doubted Julian would be interested in me. "We've been together for several months," Julian added, placing his arm around my waist naturally and protectively. "Elizabeth is exceptional. I feel fortunate she accepts my focus on work." "How nice," Victoria replied, her expression becoming rigid. "Well, we need to keep mingling. So many guests to thank. But let's properly reconnect soon. Elizabeth, it feels like we haven't truly talked for so long." They departed and I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That entire interaction was strange. She seemed shocked that you appeared happy. Victoria is unaccustomed to me possessing anything she considers prestigious, like an attractive date who impresses her new relatives. "So, you think I'm good-looking?" Julian's eyes sparkled playfully. "Don't get arrogant. You are visually appealing, objectively speaking. It's a factual statement, of course. Strictly nonsense." Around 10 o'clock, the planner announced that the couple would soon leave. Guests were asked to gather outside with small fireworks for the farewell. I considered missing this part, but Julian urged me to stay. You made it all this way? You might as well finish what you started. We joined the queue as the sparklers were given out. And when Gregory and Victoria appeared, we held our lights high like the others. They rushed down the sparkling path, smiling and waving, before getting into an expensive car, taking them to their honeymoon suite at the location. As the car left, its lights vanishing, I felt a peculiar sense of ending. The wedding was over. Victoria achieved her perfect event, her perfect union, her perfect life, and I observed it all from the sidelines, exactly as she intended. People began departing, some going to their suites, others driving away. Julian and I remained on the stairs, both reluctant to admit the evening was done. May I escort you to your car? He asked. I am actually booked into the hotel tonight, room 314. I decided it was simpler than driving back to the city so late. I paused, then asked, And you? Same situation, room 209. My coworker booked the room before falling ill, so it seemed logical to utilize it. We walked slowly through the landscaped grounds, following the lit walkway toward the main structure. The temperature had dropped further, and I felt a slight chill in my light dress. Julian instantly took off his coat and placed it around my shoulders. A chivalrous, surprising act that made me almost smile. You really didn't need to. I'm fine. Indulge me. I was taught traditional etiquette, and my mother would never forgive me if I let you catch cold. His jacket felt warm and carried a scent of costly fragrance, combined with his personal aroma. I wrapped it tighter, thankful for the comfort and the justification to hold on to his item momentarily. Thank you, I expressed, for everything tonight. You turned what might have been a dreadful evening into something nearly tolerable. Only tolerable? I clearly need to improve my faux dating proficiency. Fine. Better than tolerable. Parts of it were unexpectedly enjoyable. That sounds better. He stopped moving and looked at me. Elizabeth, I know this evening began as a practical arrangement between two wedding outsiders, but I need you to know it turned into something more important for me. You are truly witty, fascinating, skilled, and much too good for people who fail to recognize your qualities. His declaration struck a sensitive nerve within me, a part one had guarded for too long. Julian, I realize we just met. I know the timing is odd, but I want to see you again outside of this wedding context in real life, where we are just two people without family issues or seating arrangements. My immediate instinct was to say yes. All my intuition told me he was unique and that this connection was real despite the situation. Yet hesitation arose, the inner voice sounding exactly like my mother, warning me that men like him don't date women like me, and that this was likely just temporary charity. You don't have to say that because you felt bad for me tonight. I don't feel sorry for you. I'm saying it because I spent the evening with someone whose company I truly liked, and I wish for future evenings like this. Because you make me reflect, laugh, and feel less lonely in large gatherings. Because when I look at you, I see a person I want to know better. He stopped, appearing slightly exposed. But if you aren't keen, I understand. I won't pressure you. I am keen, I confessed, the words escaping before I could reconsider. I simply don't want to get my hopes raised for something that might vanish by morning. Then we must ensure it lasts. Join me for breakfast tomorrow. The venue has a satisfactory dining area where we can talk casually without wedding worries. What is your decision? Breakfast sounds excellent. His relief was evident in his sincere smile. 9 a.m. I'll meet you downstairs. We had arrived at the entrance of the main hotel. The reception area inside was quiet, as most attendees had already gone to bed. This was the time for the evening to formally end, for us to part ways, leaving me alone with the cumulative impact of the day's events. Julian also appeared hesitant to leave. He stood close, still holding my hand, his eyes studying my face as if trying to recall it exactly. Good night, Elizabeth. I'm glad I showed up, uninvited to your sister's wedding. I'm glad you did too. Good night, Julian. He moved in slowly, giving me a chance to withdraw. I chose not to. His kiss was soft, exploratory, and felt exactly right. It ended quickly, and he pulled back, gently stroking my cheek. Then he headed towards the lift, leaving me standing in the hall wearing his coat, touching my mouth, trying to process what just happened. I proceeded to my room feeling bewildered. The room was comfortable, decorated minimally, with a garden view. I hung up Julian's jacket neatly, put on my pajamas, and lay down on the mattress. My phone vibrated with a message from Victoria. Thanks for coming tonight. It meant a great deal to have you present. I stared at the text for a while. It meant a lot. Really. Was that why she assigned me the worst seat? Why she never told anyone she had a sister? Why she seemed shocked to find me sitting at a respectable table during the dinner? I drafted and erased numerous replies before deciding on a brief, vague one. Congrats again. The wedding was beautiful. She answered at once. We definitely must meet up after the honeymoon. I want all the details about your new partner. He appears very successful. Of course, that was her key takeaway from the evening. She didn't notice my support or our lack of conversation, but rather that I arrived with a noteworthy date. That single fact was what allowed her to see me. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the device down and gazed upward, absorbing the emotional turbulence of the day. I expected to feel excluded at this wedding, and my worst fears were confirmed. However, I also met Julian, spending hours feeling valued and noticed, and now I had morning plans to look forward to. Rest came slowly, my thoughts repeating scenes from the evening. My mother's critical remarks, Victoria's perfect expression, the fireworks lighting the dark sky, Julian's touch. Tomorrow I would travel back home to my regular life, my job, and my apartment in Denver. But something fundamental had changed that night, a deeper understanding of my own value and my position within my family. I woke around 8 the next morning to bright sunlight. For a moment, I was disoriented. Then the previous day's events returned, bringing a complex blend of emotions I wasn't prepared for. I dressed and washed carefully in casual clothes I brought, aiming to look appealing without excessive effort. The humor of the situation was clear. After spending the wedding feeling ignored, I was now worried about impressing a man I had recently met. Julian was waiting exactly at 9 in the lobby, looking relaxed in a navy jumper and jeans that emphasized his gray eyes. He grinned when he saw me, a sincere look that gave me butterflies. Good morning. You look stunning. You look rather nice yourself. Isn't that usually my part to say? Aren't men traditionally the ones receiving praise for their looks? I support fair compliment distribution. Come on, I hear they serve excellent waffles here. The dining area was somewhat busy with other patrons, but we secured a private table near the window facing the water. The morning sun glistened on the lake, making the surroundings feel tranquil, unlike the previous day's celebrations. During breakfast, we spoke more openly than we had at the wedding. Julian shared details about his work, including a difficult assignment he had with a factory resisting new procedures. I told him about the bakery, my skilled but moody manager, and the joy of making delicious, attractive things that bring happiness to clients. You light up when you discuss pastry work? Julian remarked, slicing his waffle. Your passion for it is clear. I absolutely do. It's the only aspect of my life where I feel completely no uncertainty, no doubt about my competence. I know my skills are high quality, so why do you permit your relatives to convince you otherwise? The query was frank, almost challenging, yet delivered gently. I put my eating utensil down, pausing to think, because they are family, because a part of me still craves their validation, even though I realize it's impossible to earn, not in the way Victoria receives it. Anyway, what if you ceased seeking their consent? What if you decided that your own estimation of yourself was more important than theirs? That is harder to accomplish when you've spent your life being measured against someone else and falling short. Julian reached across, covering my hand with his. I sincerely believe you are amazing, and I don't say that casually. We finished eating and moved outdoors, neither of us wanting to separate just yet. The morning was lovely, a perfect June day suggesting upcoming summer warmth. Other attendees were leaving, loading up vehicles, resuming their typical routines. I probably should start driving soon, I noted hesitantly. I have work tomorrow and tasks to complete later today. Before you leave, may I ask you something? Julian's face grew serious. Last night, seeing how your family behaved towards you, seeing how they made you feel insignificant and small, I became upset, not merely empathetic, but genuinely angered on your account. That's very thoughtful. But I haven't finished. What if there was a way to modify their perception, to make them view you differently, to regain some authority they've systematically stripped from you? I examined his expression, trying to understand his objective. What exactly do you mean? I mean, what if we kept seeing each other not pretending, but genuinely dating? What if we spent time together, developed a real relationship, and by doing so, proved to your family that you are not the failure they consider you? Julian, I refuse to use you just to provoke my relatives. That's unfair to you. You wouldn't be exploiting me. I am suggesting this because I truly want to see you again anyway. But I also want to help if possible. Consider this. Your sister married an executive in pharmaceuticals, right? I happen to be someone her new husband's firm requires. Someone who could potentially make things complicated for them. A shiver went through me, unrelated to the coolness of the morning. What exactly are you proposing? Julian's features took on a thoughtful, shrewd look I hadn't noticed before. I am saying that my company and Gregory's firm, Bennett Health Solutions, have been discussing a substantial sustainability update. This project is worth millions and would greatly enhance their public image and environmental record. I am a senior advisor on that project. And you intend to use this for influence? Not strictly influence, but a chance to show them that people they disregard might hold more weight than they assume. Your relatives, particularly Victoria, value success and social standing highly. What if my connections suddenly gave you entry to that environment? What if they were compelled to see you in a new light? I really should have declined. I should have thanked him for the sentiment, but clarified that I don't seek vengeance and am above minor spite. But standing in the morning light, recalling the previous nights, and a darker thought suggested I was owed some justice. This feels like scheming, I admitted cautiously. Is it more calculated than placing you behind a supporting structure at your sister's own wedding, or her failing to mention your existence to her planning colleagues, or your mother acting as if you were absent during her public address? Julian spoke with conviction. Sometimes those who harm us must face repercussions. Not malice, simply outcomes. What precisely would the result be? I won't ruin someone's job or business. That's not who I am. It involves nothing of that kind. I'm talking about being noticed, about guaranteeing your presence is recognized and respected at subsequent family gatherings. It is about your sister and mother realizing that slighting you could jeopardize professional connections important to Gregory's future, resulting in you finally receiving the respect you deserve, even if initially driven by necessity rather than true regard. It was questionable reasoning, and I recognized that. But it was also tempting. How much of my life had been spent unseen? How many family events had I tolerated feeling inferior? The idea of Victoria being compelled to recognize me, include me, and treat me as significant felt exhilarating. I need some time to think this over, I concluded. Of course, take all the time necessary. But Elizabeth, regardless of your decision regarding this plan, I was sincere about wanting to meet again. That much is true. No scheming involved there. We swapped contact information before we separated. Julian gave me a final kiss, tenderly, which accelerated my pulse, and I drove back to Denver with my mind racing. The subsequent 7 days were a hectic mix of work and contemplation. Julian messaged me daily. Short updates about his activities that evolved into lengthy discussions. We discussed various topics: childhood recollections, desired travel destinations, books we enjoyed. He never brought up his strategic idea, Victoria, or any element of revenge. He simply treated me like a person worthy of attention. On Friday, he called. I have a work dinner next Thursday in Denver. It's a prospective customer I'm trying to persuade. Would you be interested in joining me? Be warned, it could involve dull business talk, but I would love your presence. Are you sure? I know nothing about green energy advising. That is exactly why I need you there. You will keep me grounded and prevent the discussion from becoming overly technical. Also, the dining venue supposedly employs an extraordinary pastry chef. I thought you might appreciate judging their offerings? I couldn't help but laugh. You're attempting to win me over with a culinary mission. Is it succeeding? Yes. What should I wear? Thursday arrived sooner than expected. I finished work early to get ready, changing into an elegant, modest black dress. Julian picked me up at 7, looking extremely sharp in a dark suit. The restaurant was upscale, the type where prices are omitted and a wine expert is needed. Julian's client, a woman named Patricia, was already present. I recognized her from Victoria's wedding. She was one of Gregory's associates from Bennett Health Solutions who sat at our table. Her eyes grew large in surprise when she saw me. Elizabeth, what a lovely, unexpected sight. I didn't know you and Julian were still dating? Still together and going well, Julian replied smoothly, his touch warm on my back. Elizabeth has tolerated my hectic work demands. We sat down, and I tried to remain inconspicuous as Patricia and Julian discussed the But Patricia kept engaging me, asking about my job and showing real curiosity in my bakery. That sounds captivating. I greatly admire people who work with their hands and produce concrete items. My job consists entirely of meetings and data tables. Occasionally, I long for tangible creation. The meal continued pleasantly, and when the dessert arrived, a lemon tart with lavender cream, I felt compelled to share my expert view. The elements are technically proficient, but they clash instead of complementing each other. The lavender flavor is overpowering, masking the lemon rather than enhancing it. Patricia watched eagerly. Could this be improved? If you prepared it, what would you alter? I explained the necessary balance of tastes and the need for each component to stand out equally. Julian looked on with pride, and Patricia paid close attention, asking detailed questions that proved her genuine interest. We're organizing a substantial company party in August. Patricia mentioned while coffee was served. It's to celebrate the successful finishing of our sustainability initiative, assuming Julian's staff fulfills their commitments, of course. She smiled towards him. We haven't finalized the dessert vendor yet. Would your establishment be open to providing the sweets? I was stunned and paused. We operate on a small scale. I'm unsure if we can manage catering a big corporate gathering. Let me ask differently. Would you individually be interested in preparing desserts for the occasion? We can accommodate your timetable, and I have authority to offer very high pay. Julian gripped my hand beneath the table, silently offering encouragement. Elizabeth's skill is top tier. You would benefit greatly from hiring her. I must consult with my manager to ensure no scheduling conflicts with the bakery. But yes, I would certainly be interested in discussing the details. Patricia smiled genuinely. Wonderful. I'll instruct my assistant to contact you next week with further specifics. And Julian, you selected wisely in a partner. She is charming. After the meal, Julian drove me home. I was silent, absorbing the events. He stopped near my apartment and looked at me. That was a memorable evening, he commented. Did you arrange that? The desert critique, Patricia offering me that job. I planned none of it. I told Patricia we were meeting, and I mentioned your occupation as a baker. Everything else resulted from her legitimate interest and your demonstrable talent. But you had an idea she might make an offer. I expected she might recognize, as I do, that you are highly competent and should have chances to display that ability. Is that wrong? I examined his face in the limited illumination. I cannot determine if you are purely trying to support me or if this is part of some intricate plan for payback. Why couldn't it be both? My feelings for you are real, Elizabeth. But I also believe that those who overlooked you should be compelled to face your true value, not through malice or destruction, but through verifiable facts, through forcing them to admit your expertise because it influences their personal interests. This is complex. The most rewarding things often are. He reached across the seat and gently moved my hair. For the record, I'm developing strong feelings for you. That also makes things difficult, but I don't regret it. I gasped. Julian, you don't need to reply. I just needed to express my feelings. Now go inside before I do something rash, like passionately kiss you outside your home. I stepped out, but leaned back through the door. I'm falling for you too. Just so you know. His grin was bright enough to light the surroundings. Good. That simplifies the next steps. What happens next? Just wait. You'll see. In the subsequent week, Patricia's assistant provided details about the company function. It was scheduled for mid-August, marking Bennett Health Solutions' successful shift to sustainable methods. They requested a detailed dessert selection for 200 attendees, offering triple my standard fee. I spoke with my manager, who was excited by the publicity and financial opportunity. We agreed that I would use the commercial kitchen after hours, the bakery would be acknowledged as an associate, and I would receive the majority of the payment. Julian and I established a routine over the following weeks. Movie nights, meals out, and long conversations stretching late into the night. He was comfortable company, challenging my perspectives and making me smile. The mutual physical desire was clear. But I was most surprised by how much I loved his simple presence. We rarely discussed my family or Victoria during this period. It was as if we lived in an insulated space, free from that tension, where I could be authentic without familial pressure. Then, 6 weeks after the wedding, Victoria reached out. Elizabeth, hello. Apologies for the silence since the trip. Life has been busy getting settled as a married couple. Don't worry about it. How was your vacation? Amazing. The Maldives were perfect. Just as we imagined. Listen, I wanted to ask if you were free for lunch this weekend. It feels like ages since we truly connected, and I want to chat properly. I nearly refused automatically, but Julian's advice about respect and presence came to mind. Sure, lunch works. Where should we meet? We met at a sophisticated cafe close to her new home, the type of spot Victoria favored. She looked tanned and at ease. The image of marital happiness. We ordered light meals and exchanged superficial comments about her new area, Gregory's job, and the honeymoon. So she eventually asked, tell me about Julian. You two seemed close at the wedding. Yet you never mentioned dating anyone. It's fairly recent. We met a few months ago through professional contacts. He appears very successful. Gregory's team was highly impressed by him. Apparently, his company is overseeing a massive contract for Bennett Health. That was the true purpose of the meeting. Not connecting his sisters, but gathering intelligence about someone important to her husband's profession. Julian is very competent in his field, I said calmly. I'm just astonished you never brought him up sooner. I gave you all the details about Gregory when we started dating. Did she, though? I remembered awkward phone calls where she briefly mentioned a partner but shared few specifics. But arguing wouldn't help, and I wanted to see where she was going. I prefer to maintain my private life discreet. Well, I'm glad you are happy, and I heard you are making the desserts for the Bennett Health event next month. That is splendid, Gregory said. Patricia thought highly of your work. It's a promising chance. Victoria vaguely stirred her food. Listen, I wanted to say sorry if the wedding felt odd. I know the seating wasn't perfect, and I feel bad we didn't get enough time to speak. The seating put me behind a pillar. Victoria, it wasn't merely imperfect. It was deeply embarrassing. She looked slightly uneasy. That was the coordinator's fault. She didn't grasp the family structure, and by the time I noticed the arrangement, fixing it would have caused too much confusion. You could have told Gregory's associates or anyone that you have a sister. That isn't accurate. Of course people know I have a sibling. Patricia didn't. She was shocked at the wedding when Julian mentioned it. She said you never brought it up in any of your preparation meetings. Victoria's cheeks became red. I don't discuss my private affairs at the office. That doesn't mean I'm concealing you. Doesn't it, though? When did you last invite me to an outing? When did you last call me just to chat, without requiring a favor or fulfilling a requirement? Elizabeth, you are overreacting. We are sisters. Of course we share a bond. Do we? Because, from my perspective, we have a blood tie and little else. You view me as non-essential, someone you include out of obligation but wish you didn't have to. Victoria put her utensil down, her control visibly breaking. Is that truly your belief? That I don't feel anything for you? I believe you care for me the way you care for distant relatives present at big occasions, but not truly central to your life. And honestly, I've accepted that fact. The hypocrisy is what troubles me. Don't invite me to lunch and pretend we're close when we both know the reality, okay? You want truth? I'll give it to you. You made decisions that shamed our mother. You picked a profession she couldn't boast about to her friends. You rejected the standards we were raised with, and yes, that created separation between us. I apologize if that offends you, but it's the honest truth. Her confession verified my long-held suspicion, though hearing it spoken was painful. I wasn't a failure because of my inadequacies. I was a failure because I rejected their definition of success. Thank you for finally being frank, I replied softly. But here is my own truth. I am not ashamed of my decisions. I love my career and I excel at it. If that's insufficient for you or Mom, that's an issue for you to resolve, not me. And I am finished justifying who I am. I rose, leaving adequate funds to pay for my food. Thanks for lunch, Victoria, and congratulations once more on your marriage. I hope it brings you all the happiness you seek. I walked away before she could speak, my hands trembling as I headed to my car. The confrontation was harsh, but essential. A shift occurred within me, a core rejection of accepting minimal affection from people who deemed me inferior. Julian called that evening. I recounted the lunch, Victoria's revelation, and how I finally asserted myself. I'm impressed by you, he told me. That required guts. It felt right. Scary, but right. As if I finally voiced necessary truths. Are you prepared for the next phase? Which phase? The Bennett Health function is in 3 weeks. I want you there as my partner, not simply the dessert maker. I want you recognized, visible, and impossible to ignore. Do you feel ready for that challenge? I reflected on Victoria's look at the bistro, my mother's condescending remarks at the wedding, and years of feeling subordinate. Yes, I am prepared. The next 3 weeks were filled with intense planning. I focused obsessively on the desserts, designing elegant individual servings that were both tasty and attractive. Miniature opera cakes with perfect layers. Lemon panna cotta with floral gold leaf chocolate, raspberry tarts, and honey lavender macaroons that dissolved easily. Every creation was a masterpiece, demonstrating my competence and commitment. Julian offered help, sampling ingredients, and giving candid feedback. Our relationship matured during this time, evolving from tentative new love into a more stable partnership. I loved him, although I hadn't voiced it. I believed the feeling was mutual. The evening of the corporate function arrived. It took place in a sophisticated venue downtown, featuring contemporary design and glass walls. I spent the afternoon arranging the desserts, placing each one on multi-level stands with lighting designed to emphasize their artistic quality. I put on a stunning emerald dress Julian urged me to buy, telling me I should look as spectacular as my creations. My makeup was perfect, my hair softly curled. Julian's reaction when he saw me justified all the preparation. "You look stunning," he simply said. "You look quite decent yourself." The party was underway when we arrived. 200 attendee city leaders, business executives, and pharma professionals were socializing. I noticed Victoria and Gregory across the room, engrossed in conversation with a work group. My mother was also present, looking elegant in champagne-colored material. Patricia saw us at once and hurried over. "Elizabeth, the desserts are incredible. Everyone is talking about them already. You surpassed all expectations." "Thank you. I'm glad they are satisfactory." "Satisfactory? You completely exceeded them. Come, I need you to meet some people." The following 60 minutes felt dreamlike. Patricia guided me through various clusters, presenting me as the skilled baker responsible for the phenomenal sweets. People praised my work, asked about my background, and requested professional cards. I was seen in a way that never happened at family gatherings, respected for my genuine talent instead of judged for my life decisions. Julian stayed near, his support strategic and effective. He ensured our relationship was mentioned to everyone we encountered, establishing me as his partner, not solely the baker. In this social circle, where influence and standing mattered, being Julian's date gave me importance. I watched Victoria spot us from afar, seeing her face change from confusion to recognition, then to what looked like anxiety. She spoke to Gregory, and they both looked our way. "They've seen us," Julian whispered, "ready for what comes next. To make sure they know you're here." Before I could answer, Gregory approached, Victoria close behind. Nearby, he seemed stressed, his smile looking forced. "Julian, Elizabeth, nice to catch you both." "Elizabeth, all I've heard is compliments about your desserts. Truly excellent work." "Thank you. I'm happy they are being enjoyed." Victoria remained slightly behind Gregory, her expression carefully controlled. "Hello, Elizabeth. Everything looks lovely. Thanks, Victoria." A tense silence settled between us. Gregory finally spoke. "Julian, I was hoping to chat about the last part of the environmental plan. We need to discuss the financial aspects." "Of course." "Elizabeth, will you forgive me for a few moments?" I agreed, and the men walked off, leaving Victoria and me alone. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts. "You've been busy," Victoria remarked eventually, "securing big contracts, dating influential advisors. A significant difference from our last talk. I have always been busy. You simply didn't pay attention." "That is unfair. Is it you've spent years treating my profession as unimportant? Now that it benefits your spouse's professional circle, it suddenly matters." Victoria's composure faltered briefly. "What is it you want from me? An apology? Okay. I regret not respecting your job choices. I regret the poor seating arrangement at the wedding. I regret our distance. Is that the required response? I no longer require anything from you. That is the part you failed to grasp. I am not your younger sister pleading for validation. I have created a life I am proud of, surrounded by people who appreciate me authentically. People like Julian, you mean?" Gregory says he holds considerable sway in his profession. Very advantageous information. The implication hurt, despite my expectation. Do you think I am exploiting him, or he is exploiting me? That's the only way you can interpret this, right? As a negotiation, I'm only suggesting the timing is interesting. You showed up at my wedding, invisible and solo, and now you are linked with someone vital to Gregory's company and securing lucrative contracts. It's a remarkable change. Before I could answer, Gregory and Julian rejoined us. Both men looked stressed, and I wondered what they discussed. "Victoria, we must socialize with the other attendees," Gregory instructed firmly. "We must speak with various board members present." Victoria gave me one last ambiguous glance before Gregory led her away. I let out a breath I had unconsciously held. "That seemed heated," Julian commented. "Are you all right? She assumes I am using you for prestige, or that you are manipulating Gregory's professional outcomes through me. She can't comprehend that we might just genuinely care for each other. Does her perspective affect you?" I assessed my feelings honestly, not as much as it did months prior. One no longer require her acceptance? Good, because something better than acceptance is coming. What do you mean? Julian grinned shrewdly. Watch. Patricia walked toward the speaker podium positioned near my dessert arrangement. Silence fell as she began discussing the completed environmental initiative, praising Julian's colleagues for their commendable work. She then shifted focus to the gathering. I also wish to acknowledge the individual who elevated this evening. Elizabeth, please join me up here. My pulse raced as I moved forward. Patricia smiled kindly and continued. Elizabeth prepared every single dessert consumed here tonight. Her talent and technique made this celebration truly unforgettable. Furthermore, she embodies the exact dedication and novelty we champion at Bennett Health Solutions. Therefore, I am delighted to declare a continued partnership with her for all our future large-scale events. Elizabeth, thank you for your exceptional efforts. The audience broke into loud clapping. I remained frozen as Patricia presented me an agreement we had seemingly just formalized. My eyes sought Julian in the audience, noting his satisfied grin, realizing he planned this exact timing. Then I saw Victoria. She was clapping next to Gregory, but her face held complicated feelings. Definitely shock. Possibly uneasiness. Maybe even a glimmer of respect she had never shown before. My mother stood beside them, looking equally stunned. For the first time ever, I was the focus of a gathering that included my family, and it was solely due to my value, skills, and hard work. Not because of conventional success or a good marriage, but because I was outstanding at my passion. The clapping subsided, and I rejoined Julian. He drew me close and kissed my head. How does that feel? He quietly asked. Like receiving justice? Like being finally acknowledged? You were always worth seeing. They simply chose not to look. The evening went on, but the dynamic had fundamentally changed. People now actively sought me out, not as Victoria's sister or Julian's date, but as Elizabeth the accomplished baker with a promising career. My mother eventually came over, her smile strained but visible. Congratulations, darling! That was certainly a big announcement. Thank you, Ma. I guess your career decision proved successful after all. It wasn't an admission of fault, nor did it recognize years of slighting, but it was a form of acknowledgement or reluctant acceptance that I might have known best all along. In the months succeeding, everything transformed. The deal with Bennett Health generated more business and high-profile works showcasing my creations. Julian and I started living together, our relationship growing into a true and lasting connection. We talked about our future marriage, family, and creating a life that respected both our professional goals. Victoria and I settled into a tentative ceasefire. We weren't close, and likely never would be. But there was mutual regard. She realized that treating me poorly carried repercussions. Recognizing my worth exceeded her limited view of success. Our communication remained polite, but formal. Family events were no longer distressing experiences of being ignored. My mother found the change more difficult. Her self-image was tied to Victoria's success, and acknowledging mine disrupted her established order. Yet even she could not ignore my validated expertise, the esteem I earned professionally, and the life I built independently. Regarding Gregory and Victoria, the impact of her past behavior became clearer over time. Because Gregory depended on Julian's firm for environmental advice, Victoria couldn't completely disregard me without risking harm to her husband's career networks. She created a situation requiring obligatory courtesy, needing to include me in gatherings and recognize my attendance, because ignoring me would negatively affect Gregory's reputation. The pharma business was surprisingly small, and rumors about the behavior of executives' families circulated quickly. Victoria, who consistently prioritized her flawless image, now had to project herself as a caring sister. I noted the bitter twist. She had spent years attempting to erase me, and now she was forced to highlight me, speak positively of me to her husband's peers, and fake closeness. Every family gathering became a staged event where she couldn't risk showing the disrespect she previously demonstrated. Her ideal life now necessitated my participation, a necessity that would continue as long as Gregory's success relied on positive ties with Julian's company. She built her own constraint, a reminder that the sister she undervalued was now someone indispensable. Looking back at the wedding day, feeling insignificant and hidden behind the pillar, I barely recognized my former self. Julian provided more than just a temporary escort through an unpleasant party. He offered me a chance to see my true value, a supportive relationship, and the methods to insist on the dignity I earned. The retribution, if that's the term, was never intended to be destructive or cruel. It was about showing once and for all. My importance not based on my sister or marital status, but based on my abilities and identity. And standing in the professional bakery kitchen I now co-owned, turning flour and sugar into works of art. I understood that the ultimate triumph was realizing my full potential and compelling everyone to witness it.